Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me. My name is Natalie Armstrong-Motin with Marketing Resolution, and I have again with me, at my great pleasure, Chris Pearse. Hello. Good morning, Chris.
Hi, Natalie.
So, Chris, I want to chat with you a little bit about one of the many articles that you have on the Forbes.com website. You've created a fantastic library for people, and I know that what you specialize in is writing articles to help people become better, stronger leaders and managers. And one of the articles that I found most intriguing is your article that you entitled "The Top 4 Choices of Emotionally Intelligent Leaders." And so if we can just get right to it, I mean, it's a great article, but the first of those 4, you say that deliverables have to come first and receivables second. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, what I mean by that is where you put your focus, where the leader puts their focus. And in this day and age, it's very, very tempting and beguiling to focus on what the organization harvests from its activities, which is generally, certainly in the commercial arena, is money, it's profit. And there's a huge amount of effort that goes into making sure that the maximum amount of profit is recovered for the shareholders, for the owner, for whoever it is. And what I noticed talking to people running organizations is that they tend to lose sight of what the organization is there for in the first place. And there's only one reason why any organization is in existence, and that is to deliver its value to the world. Now, there has to be a quid pro quo. You know, you put stuff out, you get stuff back. It's a bit like breathing. You breathe out, you breathe in. If you take one of those away, you've got no organization left in terms of the flow of value, and in terms of the human being, you've got no life left if you don't breathe in and out. So it's pretty fundamental, but the balance has to be there. And what's interesting in the organizational sense is that, in fact, you have far more control over what you put out than what you get back. And what I get leaders to consider is how they can place far more attention, consciousness, effort on what they deliver, the value that they deliver, the value their organization delivers, rather than what they're trying to scrabble back from the market in terms of the value. And what's interesting is you've got far more control over what you put out than what you get back. So actually, it's a lot easier. And the people that really get it right find that they want, if they focus obsessively on delivering that value, they don't actually have to worry all that much about what comes back. I mean, it goes up and down. It's a bit lumpy, of course, but that's the nature of the world. But if they get their value proposition right and they put that out into the market and do their very best to deliver that, then the outcome of that, the upshot of it, which is the return, kind of looks after itself. Now, I'm not saying you don't need an FD, financial director. I'm not saying that at all. Of course you do, and you need all the disciplines around money, but it's the fundamental focus of the organization. And that also cascades down from the leader to everyone else in the organization, where they are focused on what they can give. And it comes back a little bit to JFK's famous quote, which I put in the piece: ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's much easier to do that, actually, than to worry about what you're getting back. So that's really the essence of what I'm saying.
Right. And I think that JFK quote is the exact right way to remember the idea that, if you take care of your clients, if you take care of your employees, then it naturally just flows back.
Exactly.
And so
exactly.
it's important to remember that we have to serve people before we can sell them.
Absolutely. And that's where the focus of attention needs to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now the second point that you make is you've titled it "The Temporary Suspension of Judgment," which I think says so much about what we need to do as leaders. Help me understand that point.
Well, yeah, this is pretty fundamental to the human psyche. The Western system of education encourages us to judge everything that comes at us, good, bad, big, small, hot, cold. And judgment, it's an interesting faculty because it's represented metaphorically by a knife. You know, if you see the sword of justice, which, I think it's the Lady of Justice that has to make decisions. She holds a balance in one hand and a sword in the other. And that sword is sharp. And we talk about having a sharp intellect so that you can cut things up and divide them and analyze them and look inside them. But there are many instances where that faculty of judgment is redundant, not just redundant, but actually detrimental. So, for instance, if you're at odds with someone and there's a bit of conflict going on, the very best thing you can do is to sit down and listen to them and suspend your judgment completely. Virtually impossible for some people to do because they're desperate to defend their position, to defend by attack, and to prove that they're right and the other person's wrong. I don't know about you, but I've never had an instance where I've been able to prove somebody else wrong in an argument to my satisfaction. It just doesn't work, and I suspect that's broadly true. So this business of suspending judgment, not only does it help relationships, but it helps you see the world in a different way. Because as soon as you judge, as soon as you take a position on something, you actually shut down the other possibilities. Judgment is knowing, in a sense. As soon as you judge something, you know it, or at least you think you know it. And as soon as you say, I know, you shut out all the possibilities that could arise if you say, I don't know. And in fact, the position of I don't know is far more powerful than any knowing or any knowledge that you think you may have, because then you're open to all kinds of other realities and truths, none of which I'm saying are absolute, but they're different. So I think that's really the power of judgment. The power of the temporary suspension of judgment. It helps across the board. It helps with your perception of the world. It helps with your own emotional stability, because you're not constantly in this place of good and bad, hot and cold. It certainly helps relationships with other people as well.
I think you're right. I think that one of the most powerful positions that we can take with our friends, our family, our employees, is to say, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And if only leaders could do this, and some are very good at doing this, mm-hmm. But if a CEO could stand up in a board meeting or a shareholders meeting, imagine that, and say, well, actually, I don't know. They might be surprised, because that's the truth, and the truth is quite contagious. And what you can often find is that other people will say, well, actually, yeah, she's right. We don't know this. It's impossible to know. The reality is, I always hark back to a favourite cartoon. Well, it wasn't a cartoon. It was a kids show called Stingray. I don't know if you ever came across this, a long time ago. And it was these were puppets. And in the opening titles, the boss of these puppets says, anything can happen in the next half hour. And that was the thrill of the program, because anything could happen. It was total uncertainty. It could be chaos. It could be, saving people from the chaos. All of this, that's what made it fascinating. And really, life is fascinating because we just don't know. We really don't know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, half an hour is a fairly short time scale, admittedly. But, in some scenarios, you don't know what's going to happen in the next half hour. That's why people watch sport.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. And then back to your point of, by being able to say to someone, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah.
The positivity and the power of letting people have that voice has got to pay dividends. Just that one phrase that empowers your employees encourages them, and shows them that there's opportunity for communication and, and reward for that communication, that has some really fantastic and powerful impact on the relationship that a leader builds with the people that he's leading. That shows a partnership position, a team position, a group position. It's not a dictatorship. It's us trying to move forward. And so I think that's important. And then the third point that you make in your article is focusing on behavior over words. It's a cliche because it's true, and that is that actions speak louder than words. And I think that is, I don't think we really need to explain that. Actions do speak louder than words. Absolutely.
Yep. What's there to say? I think we all know that. I think parenting is a good example of this, which is leadership. Parenting is just another form of leadership. If you try telling your kids to behave in one way and then you behave in a different way, guess which one will win every single time? And that's, that extends to any form of leadership. It's what people do. It's the way they behave. It's the way they walk through the office. All of this stuff has an impact. And the rhetoric around that actually is not particularly important, I don't think.
Well, but it can be little things, I suppose, like just being nice. If you're the CEO and you're walking through your office, just stopping to shake people's hands and say, hey, I read that report that you submitted. It's obvious you worked really hard on it. Thank you for all your effort on it. It can be the little things, but it also needs to be the big things. Leadership leading with ethics first. Yes. Those kinds of things. But I think that you're absolutely right, that we cannot forget how important it is that, actions really, really make a difference.
They do. And interesting example you brought up of gratitude. This is one of the things I work with my clients on, because it is so easy just to go into the office of you, as you just described, and look for things that you can congratulate people on or appreciate. And it's utterly transformative. It lifts everybody, including the person doing it. It's a win-win. And I tell my CEO clients they should go out and make a point spending some time looking for things to appreciate and making it vocal. And that's where those are words, but those are really important words. And all in all, it's an action of gratitude. So, for instance, a CEO telling his people to go out and be grateful, that's one thing. A CEO telling her, or actually showing her gratitude to her people, that's the action which counts.
Yeah. And in my experience, that's one of those actions that is contagious.
Yeah.
And so when it starts at the top and works its way, trickles down through every division and to every employee. And I'm not saying that you necessarily would want to be Pollyanna about everything.
No.
But you can definitely phrase things in such a way that it opens a dialogue. It starts a conversation. So maybe as a CEO, I really don't like the report that you've put on my desk. It doesn't deliver good news or whatever the case might be. But I could say to you as a leader, Chris, you obviously put a lot of effort into that report. I really appreciate all the work that you've done. Let's get together and talk about it. And then we can talk about it. But the gratitude, that action, and those words have to come first, I think, in order for you to feel appreciated and for that conversation to have any hope of moving forward to benefit the company and the employees and me and our clients.
Absolutely. And if you establish a baseline of gratitude by being habitually grateful, genuinely, for what's going on, then it's much easier to apply criticism when that's required, because being grateful isn't just telling people how wonderful they are. Sometimes there's need for feedback, and it might be quite harsh feedback. And then the other question is, if you've got nothing to be grateful for and people to be grateful to, what the hell are you doing? Because they're your people. What's going on? So that's important.
Exactly. But the big difference is if you're the CEO and I've submitted a report to you and you don't like it, you can absolutely destroy me with your action or your word. You could just as easily come into the office and say, Natalie, I can't believe you spent all weekend on the report. It's absolute crap.
Yeah.
Then I'm completely deflated. That's the end of the conversation. I'm done. I'm finished. You've just destroyed any opportunity that you and I have to work together or to move it forward or to make it better. Because now you've just shut me down and shut me out.
You've been attacked by the sword of justice. You've been cut to shreds.
Exactly. On the other hand, if you come in and say, hey, how was your weekend? It must have been pretty short. I see that you put in a lot of hours and a lot of work, and I really appreciate your effort. Let's talk about what we can do with this information. It's not that your opinion has changed, and it's not that you're lying to me. It's that you phrased it in such a way that makes me feel appreciated and a member of your team. It makes me feel valuable. Yeah. And now I want to work harder for you, and now I want to engage, and I want to think harder and make my work really count for the company. So I like that very much. Yeah. That one, for me, that one's super important. And then the next one, point number 4, is a healthy aversion to beliefs. And that one, that point I really like and I appreciate, but could you explain it?
Yeah, this is kind of an amalgam of some of the other things that we've discussed. We tend to place a lot of store in beliefs, and then we identify them. We invest our life energy in them. We, if you like, live them as opposed to believe them, and they become part of us. And this is why, if you challenge someone on a deeply held belief, they respond to it. They can respond to it like an existential threat. And get very upset in the process, because you're not challenging the belief, you're actually challenging the part of their existence that they've invested in that belief. It's very, very tightly held. And so I think...
Let me interrupt and ask this question. When you say belief, are you talking about my religious beliefs? Are you talking about the belief that... I don't know, that women don't deserve the same pay? What kind of belief are we talking about?
I think all of that stuff. I think to get too identified with certainly one's own beliefs, which are, that's your responsibility. Other people's beliefs are not your responsibility, but your beliefs. When you identify too closely with those, you can miss a trick, because again, belief is about knowing. And when you know something, you shut out other possibilities. So the not knowing stance that we already discussed is really transfers to the whole system of beliefs that one has, one's belief system. And whether that's religious, whether it's in terms of the beliefs one has about oneself, in terms of your personality, what's important, what's not important. For me, it's best to take them with a pinch of salt. Because most people, as they go through life, particularly as they transfer from the first half of their lives to the second half of their lives, if they have been evolving, as most human beings do and should, the belief system will evolve too. And the beliefs in the second half of life are very often quite different from the beliefs in the first half of life. So that's to say, they aren't absolute. Don't treat them as being absolute. Take them with a pinch of salt. What you believe today, you may not believe tomorrow.
That makes absolute sense. The idea that we all evolve and we change. The more interactions we have with humans, the more likely it is that those really staunch black and white beliefs that we started out with, they get a little softer and a little rounder and around the edges, and things change. So I really like that point that you made. So the points that you're making, some of them are actions, some of them are thoughts, Some of them are just forms of communication. And I know that one of the things that you and your company do is provide coaching and consulting and training so that we can get better at being leaders and managers. And so I want to be sure that everybody knows. I'm going to put the link to your company in the description bar so that anyone can get a lot more information about how to tackle these 4 primary things that are necessary for good leadership. Get some help if they need some help with 1 or 2 or 3 or all 4 of these points that you've made, because they are imperative to having a healthy company, healthy employees, healthy business.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, I'm going to put the link into the library that you've written and produced on the Forbes.com website, which is really, really impressive. I love the articles that you've written.
Thanks.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love the way you phrase things and make it available and digestible. Yeah. So
good.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really, as always, appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Natalie.
Well, you and I always have fun talking to each other, and that always makes the day go easier and better, doesn't it?
I look forward to the next one.
Well, me too. Absolutely. Me too.
Yeah.
So listen, everyone, find Chris, go to his website, take the coaching and consulting courses if you think that they're applicable for you and your business. I'll put the links in the description bar. And as always, be good humans.